Hello there, this is James Oscroft, years 1978, and one question which reactionary I'm not bigoted butts always ask, or at the very least imply, is Jesus tap dancing Christ, when will feminazis and what have you finally be satisfied? And because their concrete little minds only ever judge the quantity of something, never the quality, never understanding the actual underlying issues which affect society, specifically asking what percentage of MPs, congressmen, senators, the police, the judiciary, business leaders, scientists, game designers, and everything else have to be female before they're satisfied. But although I will give an answer to that question in a moment, the very fact that people ask it at all demonstrates the root basis of the entire issue at hand. The reality that, as I explained in my video laying out step by step the cycle of progress and reactionary I'm not bigoted but, links down to the underbar, we as the privileged and the powerful, in this case men, are trying to give the group which we oppress just enough to shut them up and allow ourselves to bask in the self-righteous conceit that we are not bigoted or oppressing them at all without upsetting the status quo and thus losing our privilege and power over them. No different from Walmart walking the perpetual tightrope between exploiting their workers as much as they can possibly get away with without going too far, violating the law, causing their workers to strike or to quit en masse, or otherwise force them into a position where they have no choice but to stop exploiting them. Or, to give a more cliched and probably apocryphal example, Marie Antoinette offering the peasants cake in the hopes of averting the French Revolution. So then, as you can hopefully understand, the problem is not percentages or statistics, it is the fact that we, as the privileged and the powerful, still literally decide how much equality and respect to give to those who we have deemed to be our inferiors. And bearing that in mind then, to paraphrase Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, feminists will be satisfied, for lack of a better term, when 100% of all politicians, judges, police, business leaders, scientists, game developers, and everything else are women, and more importantly, nobody really cares, because once again, the very fact that the mere thought of such a misandric dystopia causes us to cry matriarchy and throw ourselves out of the nearest window at the thought of living in a world without our power and privilege as men, crying, okay, all of the Supreme Court justices can be female, but at least half of Congress and the Senate has to be male, otherwise we will be oppressed, while ignoring the blatant hypocrisy of the fact that with a handful of notable exceptions, which over the entire course of recorded history make up less than 1%, sprinkled here and there over the course of the centuries, all positions of power were held by men for millennia, and today, even having one token woman in any given group or position supposedly means that we can't possibly live in a patriarchy anymore, is the problem, is precisely what feminists and others are fighting against. Not merely the fact that only X% of anything is female, but that we as the powerful and privileged genuinely believe, no matter how subconsciously, that we have both the authority and the right to determine exactly what that percentage should be, setting the glass ceiling, to use the common parlance, and crying misandric tyranny, not only at the merest suggestion that women as a collective might ever have more power than we do, but at the idea that any woman is ever given power or a position which we declare to be the natural birthright of cisgendered men, preferably straight and white, able-bodied, mentally healthy and neurotypical, utterly torpedoing our arrogant and self-righteous conceit that we don't care if she's a woman, black, Asian, trans or anything else, as long as she can do the job, when too many of us quietly adhere to the secret bigotry that no woman can ever possibly be president or serve in frontline combat because women are too physically and emotionally weak and too much at the mercy of their hormones, condemning anything that is even perceived as being affirmative action, as misandry, reverse racism, heterophobia, cisphobia, and female or non-white supremacy, and even leaving aside the backlash against the Ghostbusters remake, which would be funny if it wasn't so viciously misogynistic, the merest suggestion that the next Doctor Who might be female, for example, makes too many of us scream feminazi agenda as we run for the bunker in droves. Meaning that just as I explained in my video regarding the representation of East Asian women and other minorities, also linked down to Underbar, this is precisely why affirmative action is both necessary and, given the fact that straight white cis men still have effectively all of the power in society, entirely fair, because rather than listening to us talk about equality, offering empty promises and platitudes while remaining totally and often willfully ignorant of the fact that we have effectively all of the power and privilege to decide whether we will allow them to be equal and respected or not, society has to crowbar women and minorities into every position dominated by straight white cis men, like a parent forcing a child to eat their vegetables while tuning out all of the inevitable whining and crying about how unfair and hypocritical it is, forcing us to get used to it, and thus taking the first step towards the day when we will finally let go of our arrogance and self-righteous bigotry and privilege, accepting others as individuals just like us.